Welcome to Real Estate Focus. I'm Kelvin La. We're going to talk about being a landlord and real estate investment. Here with me today is John Connolly. He is the Vice President of Success Real Estate. John has been a real estate professional for almost 20 years, and he has extensive experiences as a landlord and as a real estate investor. John is here today to share his experiences as a landlord and as a real estate investor. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Calvin.
I'm excited that you can be here.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the real estate market. Where is the current condition of the real estate market, and where it was to where it is now, and where it's going to be headed?
Absolutely, Calvin. One of the things I like to do is to go back 6 months, then take a caption as to where we are, and then let's take a look in the next 6 months. The last 6 months of 2012, we've seen growth. Almost the entire year of 2012, we had seen growth, but we've seen positive growth of close to 3%. 3% in appreciation of a home's value.
Right.
We probably seen maybe upwards towards 20% more homes being sold. Now that it's going to vary. It's going to vary whether you're single families, multifamilies, or condos. So it depends on what market segment you're in. But we've seen on an average of around 20% more homes being sold in the entire year of 2012. But looking at the focus of the last 6 months, we had growth, which was positive. Where are we right now? Well, we're in the middle of the winter. We're still seeing rates being as low as they currently are right now, and we're still seeing an active real estate market. Almost a mirror image as to what we were seeing in the last quarter of 2012. Now, where do I see the market going in 2013? I do believe that the interest rates are going to stay as low as they've been probably in the last 30 to 50 years. Barring any government financial crisis, which I'm not predicting to happen, I think that we're probably going to see another appreciation of around 3%. Now, you're hearing on the TV that you're hearing all over the news that we're seeing modest appreciation, but that's in certain areas. If you're looking out in the West Coast, if you're looking out in the Arizona, if you're looking out in the Nevada area, the Florida area, those are the parts of the country that got hit the hardest. And they're currently experiencing 10, 15% annual appreciation. You've got to be cautious of that type of appreciation that you're getting on an annual basis. 3% is very, very normal. That type of growth is what we experienced back in the 2004, 2005, but yet they hit the floor the hardest out of all the different states. So to see them coming back and rebounding the way they are isn't a bad thing. Seeing as though I've got some investments out in the West Coast, so I'm glad to see it.
It's great, yeah. And I think that the improvement of the real estate market does help the economy as well.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Right. And I bumped into an elderly person a couple of weeks ago. He told me that I think dated back to 1998 or 95 or something like that, where interest rates were at 12% high.
They got as high as 17%.
Right,
as high as 17%.
And he has never seen something like that, within, I think 40 to 50 years. So that tells you that, the market is good for, everybody at this point.
Locking in on a 30-year fix, you can get anywhere between, in the threes right now, which is almost unheard of.
Right. It's good, yeah. So it's good to know that the market is improving, and that would help the economies and all the other industries as well. So let's talk about being a landlord. What is being like as a landlord?
It's not as difficult as most people seem it to be.
There's a myth, right?
Yeah, it is a myth. It is a myth, and we can talk more about it. Owning properties out of state, you've got to make sure that you've got good property management company in order to be able to handle that. I would never recommend owning a property down in Florida and just being a regular landlord without having a property management company, or out in Arizona or in Portland, Oregon, unless you've got systems or unless you have property management companies set up.
Right.
But here locally in Massachusetts, I am my own property management company, and so far it's been good to me. It's been good to me. It's been good for my children's college education. When my children were born, I thought it'd be a good idea to invest in real estate. So now my daughter's going off to college, so that's helped out quite a bit. So, but overall, I think it's a great investment. I think that you've just got to learn how to manage your properties and not be managed by your properties. That's the key. Manage them and don't let them manage you.
And you got to have a good system in place as well.
Having a system in place is absolutely imperative.
Yeah.
Couple of tips I'd give to a lot of our investors or people wanting to jump into the market would be, if you've got an electrical outlet that may not be working, well, if you get a call at 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, my light is not working, well, that can wait till tomorrow morning for the most part. If someone calls you up in the middle of a January or February cold night and saying, I've got no heat, you've got to be able to make sure that you've got a couple of different plumbers lined up. So I'd say plumbers have at least 2, maybe even 3 lined up. Electricians, carpenters, you can just have some good, trustworthy contractors to be utilized whenever you need them.
Right, it's a good team. Okay, yeah, you gotta have a good team. So how do you find good tenants?
How do I find good tenants? Well, your biggest and best tool is probably going to be Craigslist. I also go into multiple listings. You and I are both realtors, and it gives us the ability to put them into multiple listing services. And by going into MLS, it's going to also go into Boston.com, Realtor.com, and all the different, it'll funnel out to a lot of the different websites. But I also, I've probably had the most amount of luck by putting my properties on Craigslist. You've got to be very, very careful. If you're looking to rent an apartment, I've seen some of the condominiums that I've seen on Craigslist that are for sale, and you've got some people from out of the country doing scams trying to rent them and having you mail them a check and so on and so forth. You've got to be cautious. Just do your due diligence. Make sure that that it is really what it is, and do a drive-by and make sure you're in a safe environment. But how do I go about finding my tenants? I've got a word of mouth. I do a lot of work with a lot of the local mental health organizations. I do a lot of work with the veterans administrations. So I've got my little niche, and I do obviously have just the general public who I rent to. But as a landlord, as an investor, if you're going to be a landlord investor, if it's at all possible, you're going to want to be able to find a niche. Maybe that niche is going to be having apartments over by the colleges. Maybe that would be a niche you want to. Another niche would be maybe you want to, do what I'm doing, which is try to take care of the special needs, or try to take care of the mentally disabled, or trying to take care of the veterans. So I'd highly recommend if it's at all possible, in order to be able to find that niche. And as we've talked earlier, there are going to be 3 different types of real estate investments. 3 different types of properties that you can own. There's a level A, there's a level B, and there's going to be a level C. So a level A would be a high-end apartment. Those are going to be the most costly to, 1, purchase, but 2, it's going to be the most costly in order to be able to maintain. They're the ones that are going to have the garbage disposals, they're going to have the dishwashers, they're going to have the central AC, they're going to have a lot of the things that can actually go wrong. But guess what else they're going to have? The high rent. Then there's going to be level B, and level B is going to be, an apartment that may have a dishwasher, an apartment that's going to be a 2-bedroom in Quincy that might be between $1,400 to $1,700 for a 2 or a 3-bedroom apartment. May not have all the amenities, may even be in a 2 or a 3 family, but it's clean, it's safe, it's a crisp apartment. And then there's going to be level C, and a level C would probably be in a non-desirable area, something that's probably, might not have newer thermal pane windows, might not have vinyl siding. Might be, if average 3-bedroom in Quincy is between $1,400 to $1,700, a level C would probably be around $1,000 to $1,200. The benefit to that is that it's the least amount of property to purchase,
right.
But also the downside to that is it's going to draw you the least amount of rent, and your tenant quality is probably going to be the least amount that you're going to be able to get.
Is at the low end, basically?
Yeah, but then the low end also has low expectations,
right.
And the high end has very high expectations. The key to it is that you've got to be able to meet your tenants' expectations. And whenever I go to rent any of my apartments and I'm interviewing a tenant for the first time, I'll often sit back and say to them, you're going to get 3 things from me. You're going to get a quiet, clean, and safe place in order to be able to reside. Some of the other things that I will do is I'll probably walk them out to their car and just make sure that I'm not the least bit concerned if they're driving a BMW, a Porsche, or a Mercedes. What I'm more concerned is looking in the inside of their car. They're like living in the inside of their car.
Right.
Is their car
that tells you something, isn't it?
Well, if their car's an absolute mess, what's that telling you? That's going to tell you that their home life could very well be a mess.
Or could be homeless.
Yeah,
to be homeless.
Yeah. Oh, one of the other things that I also do is I may stop by their current resident and drop off a lease. That way, there you can just get a feel for them. And if they've got a motorcycle ripped apart on their kitchen table, you might not want them as a tenant. If they've got a dog that's barking, horrifically that they never even told you about, issues like that. So if you can do your due diligence up front and front load as many problems as you possibly can, it's the best situation.
It's great. Yeah, good tips. And I think that being a landlord, checking on people's credit reports and financial history. Those
Absolutely
are playing very
positively key.
important
Absolutely
role.
positively key.
Yeah.
If I was to look back and tell you some of the problem tenants that I've had, more than most, not that I've get, when you own enough properties, you're going to get problem tenants. It just comes
Right,
with, it's the
right,
nature of the beast.
yeah, right.
More often than not, I'll inherit those problem tenants, meaning I'm going to take over a property and it's going to have the current tenants, and those current tenants, I've got to work them out of my system. I either work them into my system and show them how my system works, or I work them out of my system. So in just by doing a credit check, as a matter of fact, I was renting an apartment today and I had 3 young gentlemen fresh out of college. They wanted to rent my apartment. That was problem number 1, 3 gentlemen fresh out of college. But more importantly, 2 of the 3 didn't have any credit, and they were just gonna, they promised me that, we're gonna pay cash on a monthly basis and so on and so forth. I said no to them. I was renting another apartment. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. I had a girl come in with a 540 credit score, and she couldn't understand, why I wouldn't rent to her. But credit score, and then you look at the history. So the fact's going to be this, Calvin. If someone had perfect credit, they're not going to be renting one of my apartments, are they? They're probably going to be buying a home. So I take that into account. But what I do is, if someone has let me give you a perfect example. A lot of people have lost their homes recently, haven't they? They've lost them to short sales, they've lost them to foreclosures,
right.
and so on and so forth. I don't discriminate against them, obviously. But what I will do, as a matter of fact, my heart bleeds for them. I mean, I know, because we're in the industry, we work with those type
Seen
of
ups and
homeowners.
downs,
We've seen
right.
the ups and downs. We've seen the devastation that can take place, that you
Right.
can have a husband who's a full-time plumber and the mom who's a nurse in town, and
Right.
all of a sudden both of them get laid off and their
Right.
world gets flipped upside down.
Right.
What I do is this. I'll take a look at the credit history. If I see, no, I've got a great company, and they could call one of us in the office, and we could can supply them with this company. And you can find a lot of these companies online, but for $20 or it's $25, and I have the tenant pay for that credit check. Basically what I do is I take a look at their history. So over the last 6 months, over the last year, they may have a 540 or a 580 credit score, which is unacceptable. I won't take anything under 600. I question anything from 620 and under. But my threshold is going to be definitely at 600. But I'll look at that history, and I'll sit back and look at the last 6 months and say, all right, they do have a car payment with GMAC, and they've made all their payments on time. I noticed that they do have a Sears credit card. They've made that on time. So over the last 12 months, they're rebounding. They're coming back on their credit. That's someone who I may let come into my system only because the facts are going to be in front of me. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm sorry, I'm a super nice guy, I promise you that, you can call my previous tenant, my previous landlord, which FYI, what previous landlord or a current landlord that wants to get rid of a tenant is going to give a bad recommendation? No one.
Right.
They're going to sit back and say, Calvin, this guy's the best guy. He mows my lawn. In the meantime, he's incredibly noisy and so on and so forth. You can't wait to get him out of his system.
Right.
So I don't go back to their current tenant, their current landlord.
Right.
But what I will do is maybe go back to 2 landlords back. But I'll tell you, just by taking a good, close look at their credit history, you can, outline someone's life in the last. So someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm just falling upon a hard time. And then you look at their income, and then you look at their debt, and then you just really take a look at over the last 6 months, over the last year. The young lady who wanted to rent one of my apartments recently, who had the 540 credit score, she was late the last 3 months under a car payment, and she couldn't understand why I wouldn't rent to her. But just by looking at that credit
It's common
history
sense,
report,
isn't it?
It's common sense.
Right. And a lot of times people are afraid of becoming a landlord because most of the time the tenants call you at midnight because the water tank is leaking or something like that, or they found mice in their unit. So I mean, might be a lack of privacy as a landlord. And so what would you tell the people who want to become a landlord? What are the myths to become a landlord?
Overcome your fear. I think I have a lot of young investors and older investors that come to me, and some people sit back and say, I may not be prepared for this because of my age, and I've had other investors come to me at 68 years old saying, I'm going to jump into it now. I wish I did this when I was younger because it's going to be a good retirement for me, something to be able to keep me busy. I think my advice to anyone in the myths that go along with it, so the myth is going to be that, hey, on Thanksgiving I'm going to get that phone call and I'm going to have no hot water, and my hot water heater is pouring down the tenant below, and I've got crazy tenants screaming and yelling and fighting with each other. That then goes back to my advice that I offered to all of your viewers earlier, and that's going to be, manage your property and don't let your property manage you.
Right.
So the fears that people have and all these myths that people have, they can be overcame, that you can overcome them. So and it commonly happens. I mean, the last cold spell we had, I had a few of my tenants call me up and saying, hey, I've got a problem. I've lost my hot water. Basically, I call out my plumber, and if that plumber's not available, I go to plumber number 2. And if that plumber's not available, I actually have plumber number 3 that'll be able to come in and pinch hit for me. So if you just have everything set up and have systems in place, so if someone sits back and says to me, my bathroom light or my bathroom vent is not working, guess what? You're going to wait till tomorrow morning to be able to solve that problem.
Tough luck.
Yeah, well, not tough luck, but I mean, you prioritize.
Right.
You prioritize, the crises that are going on, and what is a crisis and what is not going to be a crisis. And then the 2 tenants are not getting along, or this tenant's parking in my parking spot. I shoveled out that parking spot, and tenant B jumped into my parking spot. It's so disrespectful, and and so on and so forth. You've got to be a babysitter. I've got young children, so it's really, really helped me out in being a great landlord. And I basically come over and I explain it to them, and I just explain how it's going to be. You guys are grown-ups, and if you guys can't handle it, guess what? One or both of you are going to be moving on. So if you guys don't need to live with each other, just need to live in the same building. And if you just put your foot down and just be strict about it and try not to be the nice guy. Nice guys always, when it comes to being a landlord, nice guys always finish last. I'm telling you that right now. So want some advice, ladies and gentlemen? Try not to, be honest, be straightforward, explain to them exactly what they can expect from you and what you can expect from them. And if they cross over that line, you've just got to make it a point to sit back and stay right on top of it. Late rents, I don't tolerate that. Noise, I don't tolerate it. It all breaks my 3 rules, which is going to be quiet, clean, and safe.
And then pay rent on time as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very important.
So when it comes to buying properties, a lot of times when you buy properties, they might come with tenants or they might come without tenants. What is the difference between buying properties with tenants and without tenants?
Good call. Good question. I prefer to choose my own tenants if at all possible. So, but if you take but if you take over a building and you've got a 3-bedroom apartment and someone's bringing you in $1,800, that very well may be above market rent when you're going to take a look at this. It's not such a bad thing. Most landlords that are going to be selling a property, to be brutally honest with you, are not going to tell you the downfalls to some of these tenants. And I recently had one of my investors that I was currently working with. When we went in, we previewed the property to go take a look at it. There was a woman in this apartment. She actually had her Bible lined out, and she had, her apartment was staged absolutely perfectly. As soon as my investor friends took ownership to it, she decided to stop making payments. And it was a small amount that she was stopping because she was subsidized housing.
Right.
And what she didn't realize is that you can't do what she's doing. And we just, I walked my investor friends all the way through the situation. So it's just being able to stay right up on top of it.
Right. And it could be tough.
It can be tough. So that situation, those landlords, those investors didn't have a choice. They had to buy the property. It was a great value. They had to buy it with those 2 tenants in place. In a perfect world, I'd rather not have the tenants there because I can screen them. I know exactly what I'm going to be able to get into. And going back to what I spoke to you about at the beginning of this show, which is going to be my biggest problems I've ever had with tenants is going to be that of the ones that I inherited. So you could very well be inheriting other people's problems, and if you just lay the rules down as quick as possible and be prepared for it, be prepared saying, hey, I don't know these 3 tenants, or I don't know, this 5-family I'm buying, I don't know the 4 of the 4 units that are currently occupied right now. You got to take a leap of faith and just do the best you can possibly do. And maybe my advice to you would be is to, in order to have those new tenants or those existing tenants stay with you, give a credit check. Most landlords, if you wanted to check out the credit of my current tenants, I probably wouldn't allow it. But as soon as you take occupancy of the property, sit back and say, look, we're going to put in new tenancy at will or leases. Some of my investors will only do leases. They think leases are the best thing. And other investors that I know really will only do a tenancy at will agreement. It's to how big you are and what your appetite is for what type of contracts that you want with your tenants.
Right. I think that by speaking on the same page, I know that some people, have made some mistakes of buying properties that included with tenants, and most of the time, they're having tough time to kick them out or to evict them because some of them didn't want to leave and they ended up, have to hire a lawyer and pay the lawyer fees and try to evict them, stuff like that. That process could take up to a year to a year and a half. to evict those existing
It
tenants?
could be anywhere, I think a year to a year and a half might be a little bit on the long side, but it could be anywhere between 6 months and a year anyways.
Right.
Minimum could be, I don't want to say minimum.
Depends
but
on
I
what
mean,
types of tenants.
Depending on what type of tenant, what type of situation you're going to be in. It could cost you up to $5,000 in just legal fees.
Right.
And a perfect example is a good friend of mine. I convinced her to not sell her home, but to rent her current home and let's go out and buy her another property. And I said, this is going to be a children's college education fund. And she had the down payment to be able to buy, and so it all worked out well. Well, unfortunately, her tenants that were currently in the home, they were great for 4 years, paid on time, everything was great. But unfortunately, they were getting divorced. And the husband and the wife ran into a very, very, very difficult time. And he took off out of state, and she can't afford the rent anymore. And she's like, I don't know what I want you to do. And here it is in the month of December. I don't plan to move out until the kids get out of school. That's a very, very difficult situation. You've got to be able to plan for that. You've got to be able to make sure that you've got money in escrow in your own account in order to be able to support that. There's a right way of being a landlord, and there's a wrong way of being a landlord. The right way of being a landlord is making sure you stick by the rules, the guidelines, make sure that you know the lead paint laws, make sure you know exactly how the whole eviction process works. The eviction process can be very, very, very complicated. You can go down to Quincy Court and try to figure it out on your own. You can get a constable, but what I highly recommend, in order to be able to protect yourself properly is to hire legal counsel. Get a good attorney in order to be able to walk you through it. A good attorney might cost you $1,000 up front, and you do all the legwork. And it depends on what level it's going to be. It first starts with a 14-day notice to quit. If I do not have my rent in my office by the 3rd, they immediately get a 14-day notice to quit being sent out. That 14-day notice to quit can be cured once they pay the rent. And then from there, if they're still not paying it, then you begin the eviction process. That could be a whole show all within itself. But as long as you know the system, you know how it works, and you stay within it. Most tenants, to me, it's just a respect thing. All I ask my tenants is, hey, I understand that you may not have my rent till the 5th or the 6th, or maybe even the 7th, maybe even a week late. All I want is a phone call. If you show me the respect of giving me that phone call and basically saying, hey, I'm going to be late, my pay cycle, I get bi-weekly checks, and I'm not going to get my check until the 4th, I'll drop the rent off on the 5th, I'm okay with that. It's when you ignore me, you don't tell me
Just a
that,
heads up.
and then I have to give my constable, pay my constable to show up and serve you with the 14-day notice to quit. A constable, looks pretty impressive when they come knocking at your door, and the paperwork they give you is also pretty impressive. That'll make nervous, quite a few tenants who may be delinquent on their rent. Hopefully that'll solve it. And then you sit those tenants down and just, have that talk with them, saying, this is what I'm expecting from you, and this is what you can expect from me. If this keeps up, you're going to be getting a 30-day notice to quit.
Right. And this is one of the most important questions that, as a landlord, what is the reserves that needed for each unit for maintenance purposes or upkeep purposes?
Rule of thumb, this is my rule, this is the John Connolly rule of thumb, is I like to stick with in and around maybe like $5,000 per each unit, $5,000 per each. So if you've got a 3-family, you should have at least $15,000 at all times in reserves. So if the roof goes, you've got it covered. If the roof and the heating system goes, you pretty much be able to have that covered. If someone goes delinquent, if you've got a vacancy for 3 or 4 months on one of those units in your building, you're not going to be, you're not going to be sweating it out. You very well may be sweating it out, but you're not going to hopefully be sweating it out that much.
Because you have the plan in place already.
You got to buy. This is what I'm talking about. Have the systems in place and make sure you have the escrow money, lined up for you.
Okay. And next topic is flipping. What is flipping?
Flipping a home is to purchase a home, you'd hope under market value, and you're going to, and a lot of people are watching the shows right now, so flipping a home is to buy the home, clean it up, and then be able to go out and resell it.
Right. And when you're looking for investment properties, what are the major items that you look for when you're buying a properties to flip?
A couple of different things. One, I want to be able to, in a perfect world, find a distressed property. That's in a perfect world what you're going to be able to find. And what is a distressed property? A distressed property is going to be a bank-owned property, meaning the bank actually owns it, or it's going to be a short sale, which means the owner still owns the property, but they're selling it for less than what is currently owed on the property. That falls into the quote-unquote distressed sale category. And those are my market area that I really try to be able to go after. So what I'm looking for, number one, is going to be that, and it's not always that situation, by the way. I may be looking at your great aunt's home that she hasn't done any work to, and it's in dire need of a lot of repairs. So a home it's definitely a home, single family or a multifamily that's in need of a tremendous amount of work. That's what I've got the appetite for.
And when it comes to financing, I mean, there are two types of financing. One is called 203K, and the other one is hard money lending. So, if you can briefly share with the viewers, what is 203K?
Okay, well, let's take a step back because there's actually conventional lending too.
Yep, right.
So a conventional lender would just be you go down to your local bank, Sovereign, Citizens Bank of America, South Shore Savings, and I hate to leave out any of the other ones that we give business to, but that you're just going to go down and just get a loan from them, and they very well may have what's called a construction loan, and construction loan, a 203K loan, are just basically going to be the same thing. What you need to do on a 203K loan, now let it be known I am not a licensed mortgage broker, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I can tell you though, on a 203K, and I've never personally done one, but I've sold a lot of homes that a lot of investors have used those type of programs. And basically what it is that you sit back and you say, all right, this 6-room, 3-bedroom Cape, I want to put a roof on, I want to put a heating system in, I want to do vinyl siding. I want to do around $75,000 worth of capital improvements to that property. The 203K will allow you to go and do that. They'll allow you to, one, purchase the property for $200,000, then they'll allow you to take that $75,000 money out in order to be able to do the rehab to the property. On average, I think you need at least 2 or 3 different quotes on each each project.
By licensed contractors.
Right. More often than not, buyers that are going through a 203K at the end of it are tired. It's a difficult program, but it's worthwhile. It's definitely it's worth the pain that you go through. But the banks are very, very leery. They want to make sure that the funds that they're giving out are going to be given out to insured, licensed contractors. They want to make sure that there were 3 different bids from 3 different plumbing contractors, from 3 different electrical contractors, so on and so forth. So it is complicated in order to be able to do that, and I'm sure some of the conventional loan construction programs are just as complicated. But at the end of the day, it's definitely worth doing. Let's talk about what's called private hard money lending, which is also called private money lending. When you're getting into those type of lending, your interest rate is going to be a conventional mortgage right now, we talked earlier, is going to be around 3%, maybe 4%. A 203K, I'm not sure what the interest rate is, but
it's a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little bit higher. But on average, if you're going to use hard money private lending, which is also known as hard money, you can expect to pay anywhere between 12 to 14% interest. And then you're also going to be paying roughly around 2 points. What is a point? A point's going to be 1% of the value of the loan. So if you borrow $200,000 and you're going to be paying 2 points, roughly you're going to be paying around $4,000 in points. That's money that's not going to be given back. So you're going to be subject to paying anywhere between 12 to 14%. So time is of the essence when you're paying that type of interest, that type of quote, as investors will call it, juice, that type of interest. When you get that type of money out in the street and you're making those monthly payments, time is of the essence. You've got to turn that project as quick as you possibly can.
Right, and plus, don't forget you got incurring costs too. So
better believe it. You got to be able to, when you're doing flipping properties, you really need to make sure that you've got a good grasp as to what all your expenses are going to be. Because if you let your expenses get away from you and that horse takes off from the barn, you go to shut the doors and the horse is gone, your expenses, your profits can be gone. There's a lot of things you've got to be able to take into consideration on flipping a property. One that no one really takes into consideration is what is the cost related to an unoccupied property to insure that? Just to carry the insurance on an unoccupied property can be upwards towards $300 a month. $300 a month. Some of the flip scenarios that I run into, it on average, it will take me to do windows, roof, siding, kitchens, bathrooms, paint all the walls, replaster the walls, paint the walls, and do over the floors. I can do that in around 6 weeks. If a small 1,500 square foot, probably takes me around 6 weeks to be able to turn something like that. I'm always staying focused that I know time is going to be money. So when you have one contractor and that maybe that plumbing contractor, that plastering contractor, doesn't show up, blows you off, or says, hey, I'm going to be a week late, you got to take into consideration that if your monthly mortgage is $3,800 on that property, how much did he just cost you? He may have been saving you $500 on being able to coming in $500 less than the next competitive bid, but if he blows you off by a week, that savings you had is long gone, and now the trickle effect. Now your painter might not be able to make it. Now your finished carpenter might not be able to make it. Now your carpet guy might not be able to make it. So keeping a very, very tight schedule is very, very important on flipping of properties.
It's great, yeah. Well, I'd love to have you on the show again to talk more detail about flipping. And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with the viewers, and your expertise is very helpful.
Thank you for having me.
You have extensive experiences as a landlord and as a real estate investor. Well, if you are thinking of becoming a landlord, making sure you have the right resources and the knowledge to maintain the property, especially when it comes to dealing with bad tenants. Flipping properties can be profitable and a good way of building wealth, but it requires the savviness to acquire the right properties and flipping them at the right time. Having a good team on your side with good professionals to help you to flip properties can make you become a successful real estate investor. Thank you for watching. See you next time.